What's up, Restore Church? After your pastor made a fantasy football trade with me by giving me Cam Newton the day before he retired from football forever, early, but forever, I just knew that I wanted to help him out in any way I could. And so when he asked me to share with you guys a little bit of my story, I was 100% jumping on it right away. All joking aside, I'm happy to share what God's doing in my life. I think that's our duty as Christians to share what God's doing in our life. And right now in my life, I'm going through a bit of a trial as my wife a couple months ago was diagnosed with breast cancer. And that first weekend that she was diagnosed was easily the hardest weekend of my life. And the depth of despair that I experienced at that time was a low point I'd never known. And I'm really thankful as a Christian. I'm really thankful for my faith. I'm really thankful for the theology that I trust in and believe in, and being able to have like solid ideas that I can come back on when things get tough. But that weekend, it felt like there was nothing I could do to get myself out of that pit. I was just spiraling constantly. I was thinking about, how many years that my wife might be alive, and how old my kids are going to be then at that time, and how I'm going to raise them alone. And those types of thoughts that go through your mind right away, and just spiral out of control. And that was really, there was nothing I could do physically. I couldn't pray my way out of it. I couldn't logic my way out of it. I couldn't listen to enough worship music to get through it. I couldn't talk to a pastor or talk to a friend enough to get past it. It was just a really, really difficult, dark time in my life. And what came out of that weekend, by God's grace, truly, it was a form of, so I'm trying to make my notes here a little bigger so I can actually see them. What came out of that was, by God's grace, a faith and a peace that I can truly say was not of my own. It was so gracious of the Lord to give me peace that surpasses all understanding. I now really get that phrase, and to give me faith to trust Him and believe in Him, and for Him to do it, so gracious of God to do it in a way that was not at all related to anything I could point to. By that I mean, I wasn't praying and then received peace. I wasn't listening to worship music at this exact moment and heard a song and felt peace. I wasn't working through logic in my head and all of a sudden I convinced myself to be full of faith and at peace. There was nothing I did that I could look at. And it was just God's grace, because I spent a lot of time in the Word. I spent time singing and listening to worship music. I spent time praying and trying to think about these things logically. But it was God's grace that through all of that, none of that was a part of that moment, that I received peace and faith from the Lord. And I can only say then that was miraculous, that was of God, and there's nothing I could claim to that. And that kind of confidence that comes from knowing I'm not the sole source of that. Not only am I not the sole source, I'm not even a part of it. I didn't do anything to be a part of it. It makes me think of Philippians when it says that God enables us to both will and to act for His good pleasure. And I often think about the act, right? Like, I need God to give me strength to go do this thing for the kingdom, right? But there's a difference between that and the will part. The will part is like, I need you to give me the desire to do that for your kingdom. For me, that was really powerful and something that you can't ever take away from me. And faith is a day-by-day thing. I can wake up tomorrow and I could be full of fear and confusion and struggling with my wife going through chemotherapy and struggling with my kids, not really understanding my wife can't be the same person she always has been every single day, because there are hard days. Knowing that has completely changed the way that I approach faith and the way that I approach prayer. And it I think mimics a lot of what we see in the book of Acts, where the apostles keep going back to praying for faith, praying for boldness to share the gospel, right? That God would give them what they need in order to serve the kingdom. And that whole mentality of like, I can't do this. I can't build it. I can't make it. It's only him who can do it. Is so important and really has, so far, it's totally changed my life. It's changed the way I look at things. If there's still time, I'd love to leave you with this. And if there's not time, just cut the video off, Justin. It's no problem. And I won't make any more fantasy football jokes. I happened to be reading a Psalm of Asaph that day. I think Psalm 77. And he says these words: "In the day of my trouble, I seek the Lord. In the night, my hand is stretched out without wearying. My soul refuses to be comforted. When I remember God, I moan. When I meditate, my spirit faints. I am so troubled, I can't speak. Has God's love forever ceased? Are his promises at an end for all time? Has God forgotten to be gracious or shut up his compassion?" That I identified with. That was something I'd never really been able to identify with. I maybe thought I could, but never like that. But what he says next is great. This is what really struck me that morning as I was experiencing this peace, this inexplicable peace that I couldn't explain where it came from apart from miracle. He says, "I will appeal and I will remember." And then he begins outlining what God has done, not in his life, but throughout history, what God has done for Israel. How gracious of God to give me that after that weekend. Like Asaph, I can look beyond even what God's done in my life, and I can look at what this same God has done throughout history. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And so what's true of Christ now was true of Christ in the past, and what's true of Christ then is true of Christ now, and we can trust in that. That was so meaningful to me, and it was really helpful for me as there's still a huge journey ahead. And I'm in no way am I thinking that I'm now this strong man of faith. And when I look at people in scripture like the apostles, like Peter, who I for so long wanted to look at and think like, man, that, these apostles are amazing men of faith. And they were amazing men of faith, but not because of their own doing, not because they were amazing men of faith, but because God made them amazing men of faith. And that's how my focus has shifted and how I've tried through this process and during this trial to really aim my prayer life. It's not so much about trying to be the man of faith as it is praying for God to make me the man of faith that my family needs me to be, that my wife needs me to be, my kids need me to be, our church needs me to be, that sort of thing. I hope that that's in some way helpful to you and a picture of God's sovereign and beautiful plan amidst difficult trials that are going to come up throughout our lives.